Good afternoon, Facebook. Perry Power here. Hope you're well. If you followed some of my recent lives, you will know that I've promised to try and do more of these live at 5, sharing some property sale strategy advice to anybody out there that's thinking, trying, planning to move house, sell their property. Just making sure my audio is okay. Looks like it is. I've got a shiny head because I have lighting set up today, but I've done it all wrong because I rushed it. So there's all shadows everywhere, minor details. The content today is really, really important. And I'm pulling on a real life client experience that happened this week. So we'll let a few more viewers come on. If after this live, anyone's got any questions, find me a message. I'd love to help. But there's not enough of this advice, in my opinion, being shared. So I'm the one that goes to Facebook, do a Facebook Live. Hopefully you get huge value from it. And it helps you with your moving experience when you come to move house. I won't waffle on too long, but I've written a number on here, number 6. Excuse my, bless him, little Fred's lockdown life working. He's working in the office sometimes with me. And he uses the whiteboard. But it's a little known fact that there's 6 or 7 different methods of sale that you can choose when you decide to sell your property. Right. So the natural first assumption, first opinion is, I'll put it on the market. I have viewings, I instruct solicitors, and I hopefully exchange contracts. So I'm going to take you through a real life example. A client came to me. They've got 5 properties to sell over the next 2 years. Quite a sad situation as to why they need to sell them. So I won't go into detail, but it kind of highlighted the importance of when you're speaking to an agent, having that method of sale conversation with them. Because if it wasn't for the fact that we have every method of sale at our disposal, she would never have chosen the method of sale that we discussed, pros and cons of each method. And so she wouldn't have chosen that method. Let me give an example, right? So there's probably more, but 6, 7. So the first one's private treaty. So that's the majority of properties in the UK are sold, probably 98% are sold via private treaty. Big issue with that. They've got a 30% fall through rate. And that's even with a very small, short chain. Now, if you were to add more links to that chain, the time it takes from offer acceptance to legal exchange of contracts, such a long time, things can change and chains can collapse. Now, I was having a conversation with another agent a while back, probably about a week ago. Really interesting point. So even if there's no chain below the buyer and no chain above the seller, so you've got 2 transactions, 2 people, 1 transaction, there's still going to be around a 30% fall through rate because life changes, mortgage changes, surveys, all the things that happen after offer acceptance. Now, add another link to that transaction, and I genuinely believe, I can't prove it, but 17 years doing this job tells me that add another link to that chain, and I think you're increasing the fall through rate by around 10%. So 30% standard, 1 link, 2 link, you're talking kind of 50% chance of it falling through or not if you've got a 3 or 4 link chain. So that's the first method. I'll come back to that in a minute. Public auction is the second most popular way of selling in this country, but it's only about 2% of transactions. The benefit of public auction is that it's absolutely exchange contracts on the day the offer is accepted, which cuts out average of 16 weeks at the moment of marketing, legal conveyancing time. There's pros and cons to that. So we sell via auction method of sale, and there are some situations when that's really needed. Most common is if it's an unmortgageable property. So there's no point going to market. Might as well put it into an auction and get a cash buyer. Can sometimes, not always, it's a bit of a misconception that sometimes you sell it for cheaper. but that's not always the case. Sometimes properties in auction really fly if you get enough people really wanting it. And financial troubles, I've had clients who have come to me and said they're facing repossession. What can I do? So we've suggested that method of sale. So it needs a discussion with an agent that has every method of sale at their disposal to talk you through the pros and cons and choose one that suits your best situation or the reason why you're moving. Sealed bids, sale by tender. That's quite an important one. Not that common. Assisted sale. So here's an interesting one. So there's some situations where you get some clients that use a kind of we buy any house cash buying companies, and I'm quite against those because I don't believe there's a need to do that. I believe you can always get the same outcome with a sale by auction, but also get the best price because you put it out to market and get competing offers. But we'll talk about that another day. Assisted sale is, let's say you've got a £200,000 property, cash buying companies or someone that would take it off your hands quickly, apparently, offer you 170, 30 grand less. That might be a bit of a hit too far. An assisted sale is you option the sale of the property to somebody at, let's say, £185,000. They pay you a few £1,000s now to, if you're facing financial troubles and that kind of stuff, then that extra money now can really help some people. And then you grant them 6, 8, 12 months to sell the property, maybe for 200, and they get the uplift in value. So you've got a bit of money now to get you out of a situation, and then you'll get 185 for the property once the assisted sale person, usually an investor, has helped you, has sold it for 185, and it achieves 200. They get the difference. You get your 185 plus you've had some money up front. So getting a bit detailed, didn't want to get too detailed. So if you wanted to talk about other sale options, you can always drop me a message. The next one is a rent to buy. So I'm not an expert on that, but I know it's becoming more and more popular, where you rent a property to a tenant on a longer term basis, on the basis that at the end of the tenancy, 12, 24, 36 months, they would have purchased the property. And one that I'm advising a lot at the moment, and this is the one we're going to talk more about today. I'm already 8 minutes in, I better hurry up. So is what I call committed transaction. Really important sale method because we've invented our version of it. So you've got private treaty, which takes time, there's a lot of uncertainty, both in time scales and price. The price a buyer's prepared to pay can change during the conveyancing process because of maybe market changes, because of surveys, all that kind of stuff. You got public auction, which is immediate exchange of contracts, certainty, sometimes a lower price. Certainly you need to be prepared to sell it for a lower price to put it into auction, but you might get lucky on the day and it might fly. And we've created a real hybrid of the two. And circling back to the situation I was talking to you about the client this week. So she came to me and said, Perry, I've got 5 properties to sell. We have to sell one by the end of this financial year. Now, bear in mind, we're at the start, 12th of February. That is virtually impossible with private treaty because the time it's taking for conveyancing to take place at the moment, the marketing time that me and my team need to get the best price to put it to market. We need at least a month, 2 to 3 weeks, maybe even a month to be safe, to put it to market, to maximize interest. Of course, I could ring one of our 3,500 buyers and say, I've got this house, do you want to buy it? But I can't guarantee I'm getting the client the best outcome because it would have been the only person that's been offered the opportunity to buy it. If we put it to market fully for a campaign, and then at the end of that campaign, discuss the offers. I'm going off on a tangent, but the purpose of this, so back to committed transaction, it's an extremely more certain method of sale, and it still gives mortgaged buyers who need a mortgage the ability to buy. So in simple terms, you've got private treaty and you've got public auction, and it marries the two together. So the seller, for example, when you market a house, a buyer makes offers, then all the legal documentation is prepared by the seller's solicitor and sent across to the buyer's solicitor, and there could be things in there that derail the sale. With this method, the seller prepares all the legal pack, all the searches in the pack, lease management information, indemnity policy confirmation, building regulations, planning permissions, all the stuff that would usually only become apparent after offer acceptance. The seller's solicitor puts it all into a pack, so that as soon as the buyers view the property, they can say, I like it, I'm really interested in making an offer. We would say, great, download the legal pack, have a good look through it, have your solicitor look through it, then let's start negotiating once you know what you're negotiating for, warts and all. So sometimes you might have a property that hasn't got planning permission from 15 years ago, but there'll be an indemnity policy included in the legal pack. So that happens, but at the point of offer acceptance, because all the legal work's been done by the seller and provided to the buyer, and the buyer and their solicitor have the option to ask inquiries, what we call raise inquiries, basically means ask questions. They can do all that prior to making an offer. Then they can make a more informed offer. And at the point of offer acceptance, the buyer pays a 1% reservation deposit. So with private treaty, there's no commitment until exchange of contracts, which is when the buyer pays a 10% deposit, usually. With public auction, there's huge commitment on the day of offer acceptance because the buyer actually pays their 10% deposit and exchanges contracts. With what we call committed transaction, it's basically the buyer and the seller entering in to a committed transaction, hence the name. Didn't take me long to think of that one. Whilst everyone knows everything. So the buyer's got the full details, all the searches, the land local authority searches. Buyer places a 1% pre-contract deposit. It's not a charge, it's a deposit that gets offset against the purchase price when they're ready to exchange. And the seller grants them 28 days to exchange contracts. Now, those 28 days are pretty much just for the buyer to go and get their mortgage. And that can be extended. So I've had situations where buyers have viewed the legal pack, loved it, want to buy it. Say to me, Perry, I'm going to probably need a 6-week exchange because of X, Y, Z. And that's totally fine as long as the seller agrees to that, which 9 times out of 10 they will. Sellers using this method just need a bit more certainty of time scale and price. And then so they agree to, they place a 1% deposit on offer acceptance and exchange in 28 days. And then completion is usually 2 weeks after that. Can be longer, can be shorter. But that method of sale has a 95% success rate versus a 70% success rate with private treaty, if not 60% when there's a chain, if not 50% when there's a longer chain. So it's a really important sale method that I'm trying to advise a lot of clients because they're just not aware of it. Particularly, it's useful when the client's got no onward chain, because most sellers that have no onward chain would prefer a buyer with no chain. And that method attracts those kind of people, buyers that they're being rented, they need to serve notice, they would like a bit more certainty of a time scale so they can serve notice on their rental property. That's a really good method of sale that's working well. I'm going to share my screen, so I'm going to show you just how well it can work. That's a stream. So these are some examples of properties that we've sold via our committed transaction sale process. There's no additional fees to sellers. There's no additional fees to buyers. The 1% deposit is just a commitment deposit, but only once the buyer has seen all the legal pack and what I call warts and all. So warts and all means if it hasn't got building regulation for something, it won't be in there. It is what it is. Let's get that out in the open now versus 3 months of conveyancing down the line and it all collapse. This one was a great example. This sold for 115,000 over guide price. The owner had multiple valuations, and my valuation was, I think, way below what it achieved. Every valuation was, but it completely just flew because there was lots of interest in it. This one was prior to, this was an auction situation. That one got 35,000 over guide. It's a really good way of making sure that you get the best outcome in an agreed timescale. Of course, it's not good for every situation, but I genuinely believe it's better for more situations than people are led to believe. And the reason why it's not used more is, one, it's a new method of sale. There's variations of how we're doing it, but I don't like those. Hence why we had to produce our own. There's variations where the buyer has to pay a 3% purchase fee. I really dislike that, because it just means the buyer ends up paying 3% less for the property because they're paying a 3% fee to the agent. It's just a good way for when, if an agent has it in their toolkit as an option, when an agent should do their job properly, which is sit down with a client and say, great, where do you want to get to? Why do you want to get there? How quickly do you want to get there? Let's talk about the options we've got available to us. It's what happens a lot of the time when estate agents haven't got things like auction available, committed transaction, assisted sale. Sometimes that's a good option for people that are in a bit of a position. Maybe they're facing financial issues. They don't want to put their property in auction and risk it selling for £40,000 less than the market value. They need a bit of money to get them out of trouble. Give someone an option to sell it for more, and they get a fair price on completion. All these different options are so important that your agent's got them available, because if they haven't got them available, they aren't going to suggest you use them, period, because they want you to sell the way they sell. So there we go. I was trying to be quick. I've waffled loads. So a few comments. Ryan, what's up, buddy? Hey, Ryan. Howdy. I bet that's Rob Emery. Can't see the name. Very similar to the modern method of auction, but they charge 6K. But that's my problem. I'm really against selling agents charging buyers the fee. And a lot of the time I've seen estate agents do marketing campaigns like sell your house for zero commission. And I guess it's true, but it's really misleading, because they are paying zero commission, but that's because the buyer's paying it probably more than what the seller should be paying in the first place. And the buyer just taking that off the offer they're prepared to pay for the property. So that you're paying a fee whatever way you look at it. You're better off paying a selling agent a really good fee to keep him motivated, and a performance fee. Performance can be based on price achieved or time to agree. Bear that in mind. I'm a massive advocate for performance fees. Remember, when you instruct an estate agent, I don't use the word instruct, I use employ, because you are literally choosing that person as your employee to get you moved or get you sold. So it's really important that you understand all the options available. I've sat in living rooms before. I've been the last estate agent in, and I've dug deep under the motivations and why they move and where they need to be and how quickly. And then I said, has anybody mentioned auction? I really think you need to avoid yourself getting repossessed, because that's going to be stuck with you for the rest of your life. And then they said, no one's mentioned auction. And I was like, that's your only real option if you want to make sure you don't get repossessed. And we'd spoke it through, and they was like, well, great. I think it was at the time a £500,000 house. They were quite happy to sell it for 450, because they would still walk away with some equity and they pay the bank back. Because remember, if you get repossessed and the house sells for less than you owe, the bank's going to chase you for the remainder. It's not a kind of hand the keys back and wipe your hands of it. So there's so many layers to this, but the whole 20-minute waffle has been about choose or understand the various methods of sale available to you before you go on the market. Because choose the wrong method, launch to market, doesn't work, it's a bit stagnant. You're best off launching properly with the right method from the get-go. Any more questions? What happened to the 1% deposit? Who holds it? And I assume it's non-refundable. So Good question. Well, the 1% deposit gets held in our ring fence client account. Okay. The platform has been, it's the same platform that auctioneers use to take a 10% deposit on offer acceptance, but we've adapted it to just take 1%. The buyer, there's a whole nother level of benefits to this, is that when you put a house to market and you have 10 viewings, you can easily see the 2 or 3 that have gone home, logged onto the internet, downloaded the legal pack, what they've downloaded, and you can really test a buyer's motivation, and you'll know that that person's really interested because they've downloaded everything. But back to your question, we hold a deposit in a ring fence client account, non-refundable. So the only way it's refundable is if the property is deemed to be unmortgageable. That's crucial, because you will get the money back because it's unmortgageable. In these situations, and now I've sold a lot of properties with this method, and you find the buyers are just as keen as the sellers to go with this method, because it's not, the buyer has to pay money, but the seller gets an easier ride. The seller has to invest. So usually, let's say a legal conveyance, let's say we've done private treaty, and the seller, they're going to pay probably £1,000 in legal fees anyway. The way this method, they're going to be paying probably 200 or 300 quid at the start. So they're investing in the searches to give the buyer the full information before they make the offer. So there's no more cost to anybody. It's just a more committed transaction for everyone involved. And my experience of doing these sale methods tell me that buyers are just as motivated, because they get a bit of relief knowing that they've got 28 days or 6 weeks to organise their mortgage. They know what they're buying. It's more transparent. They know it hasn't got planning permission, or it hasn't got a fencer certificate, but it has got an indemnity covered. A good solicitor, when they're preparing these legal packs for the seller, they will, what I insist they do when they do it for me, is the seller's solicitor will look at the legal pack with an objective perspective. So they would look at it from a buyer's, as if they were acting for a buyer on the purchase, and they would raise initial and answer initial inquiries. So it becomes, you've got all the documents, fixture and fittings form, property information form. So the buyer knows what's staying, what's going before they make the offer. Once they've made the offer, it's committing 28 days exchange or longer, and then a couple of weeks to complete. And that's why we're going with the sale method for this particular client. That's launching next week, because they need to get it completed before this one property of their 5, before this financial year ends. So there we go. Viewers are dropping. I'm clearly boring people. Hope that was helpful. Watch it back later. Hate the modern method of ends up giving the agent a bad name. I wouldn't touch it. Totally agree, Louise. I think it's all about sitting down with potential clients and saying, let's talk about what you need to achieve, and let's discuss the pros and cons of the up at 6, probably 7 methods of sale that we could choose, and let's talk about the right one for your situation. Awesome. Have a great weekend all. Hope that's helpful. Drop me a message if I can help any more. Take care.